Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the third in our winter lecture series this year. This evening, we will look into the Celtic influences of American popular music. And our speaker this evening and our guide will be Dr. Cheryl Tobler. Cheryl is a teacher and musician. She recently received her doctorate in ethnomusicology from the University of Maryland. She is a native of Virginia. She comes from Henry County. She tells me right on the Franklin County line. And something's beeping. And she has spent a lot of her life and her education here in the Shenandoah Valley. She's currently teaching ethnomusicology at Montgomery College in Rockville, Maryland, and world music and English at Trinity University in Washington, D.C. And when she's not teaching or doing her scholarly work, she plays with her band, Shen Fine, which is Celtic music with an Appalachian twist. So please welcome Cheryl Tobler.
Can you hear me? No? How about now? Is that better? Well, I'm very excited. Oh, did it go on in here? I'm very excited to be here because Celtic music is certainly one of the areas I am most interested in. Being a Celtic musician myself and performing, I was introduced in the Valley as well as the Shen Fine, my Irish band. But some of the most fun I have performing music is actually learning about its history. And obviously, as an ethnomusicologist, it's kind of a start on the side to figure out what's going on in your field, where it came from, what's happening now, and where it's going. And one of the things I wanted to do with this, I figured being here at the Frontier Cultural Museum, we already have such an excellent history source for the music. So this is a much different audience than I usually have. When I'm teaching, usually it's 18 or 19-year-olds in the DC area. Many of them don't know what a banjo is or a fiddle. So this is a great audience I think I have here in front of me. So some of that I won't have to go into detail with at all, including I think the Western Road, the Great Valley Road, the Wilderness Road. I can just kind of gloss on that and continue on. What I wanted to touch on with this lecture is to give a little bit of a feel for music migration and how it really helps a music scene thrive and continue. So the examples we'll have tonight will be obviously here in the Shenandoah Valley, but a lot of the ideas can really be applied, I think, to a lot of different music scenes around the world, and obviously throughout the U.S. So I'll be giving a little bit of a touch on the background of the music, some influences into Celtic music that you would find in the Valley, some other traditions, a couple of video clips that maybe people haven't seen. There's some interesting African influences into the music. But then I'd like to move on to something that's more current and in the modern day and what's happening with Celtic music here in the Valley. And so I'll be speaking for maybe about 35 minutes, and then the rest of that I'll actually be playing with a friend of mine who is very gracious and also on the staff here at the museum. And doing a selection of different Celtic tunes with a little introduction or maybe a little story about each and how that fits in with the music scene that's here in the Valley. These are all tunes that you would hear an Irish or Celtic band performing in the Valley. If you go to a music session, you'd hear these sorts of tunes being played. They're all ones that are currently being performed today here locally. So just to start with, hopefully this will work. It worked 5 minutes ago, but it doesn't seem to want to work now. Oh, there we go. Great. Fingers crossed. Just a quick old back here. Again, if I was doing my freshman class at Montgomery College, I would have to spend probably half an hour explaining the map, where I was, Virginia. I have a story about West Virginia if you want to ask me later, actually. So do not know. Anyway, obviously the Great Valley Road of musical migration. with all the different immigrant groups coming through, obviously through Pennsylvania, down through the valley and onwards, the cultures were connecting with other cultures. Music's connecting, language, backgrounds, traditions. All of this coming into play with creating what the music that we would be hearing today, the Celtic music in the valley. And there's different elements of this I'll touch on, the instruments that were brought in, maybe the different tunes, the playing styles, and how that affected what we see now if you were to hear, when you hear live music being performed. This is the map that I'll be using mostly in the lecture. And maybe I shouldn't say this because maybe no one would notice, but I lost my normal pointer and I had to grab my cat's mouse toy. So. But if you came up here and saw a great mouse, that's why. Oh, it's on now, definitely. Okay, you can hear me now, definitely. All right. So here we are. And for the music that, for this, there's a different sorts of paths that we'll be taking. Historically, with the Great Valley, obviously coming in through Pennsylvania, down through the valley and onwards, all the different groups, whether it's the German tracts of immigration, the Scots-Irish, the Irish. There's also some Native American influences, African influences into the music as well, all coming into play here where we are. But also I'll be talking about, in more of a present-day sense, other migration that happens between tunes, between groups. And with this, I think I can show a bit better example of just how locally you have this happen, even between towns and cities. So, for example, whether it's Harrisonburg or Elkins, West Virginia, Stanton, going down to Roanoke, out to Blacksburg and Floyd, Charlottesville, all these are different places I'll be talking about towards the second part of the talk I'll give here at the podium, and then also showing in the musical examples I'll be playing with Russ, about how a traditional scene of music isn't stagnant. You can't say it's authentic because it was played this way in this one particular decade. You know, folk music is something that's ever-changing and thrives and develops over time, and that's what keeps it as a rich musical tradition. So I'll show you how we can talk about the history of Celtic music in the Valley, but it's just as exciting to see what's happening currently with the music and how it could evolve into the future. So just quickly here, just some of the instruments I'll be talking about. Maybe this is obviously something most of you are already familiar with. And there are a few others as well that you'll be seeing some images of in a few moments. But obviously I think most of these are familiar to many people in here. Seeing smiles in the audience, right? We have the wood flute. And there's an amazing maker here, probably the world's best Irish flute maker lives. From here, maybe 40 minutes away, and I'll have a couple of slides on him. And I think his presence is something that really helps to invigorate the current music scene that's going on. You also, if you were to go and listen to Irish music, live music, maybe some of you are also performers in some of these groups. You'll see people that are performing perhaps the mountain dulcimer, the hammered dulcimer, the bouzouki here, which actually traces its roots back to Greece. And it did really become involved into the Irish music scene until the 1960s or so. So again, this is something that's ever-changing. It's called traditional music, but tradition changes as well. And it's that change that helps keep it alive and thriving. The more standard, and probably one of the oldest instruments other than the harp associated with Irish music, would be the fiddle. The penny whistle or tin whistle. Accordion, usually a diatonic accordion. You will see the piano keys, the piano accordions associated with the music sometimes. But usually it's more the diatonic with the two rows, maybe in one row sometimes. The mandolin is becoming something that gets connected more with Irish music. It wasn't traditionally part of the music scene, and when I say traditionally, I mean prior to up in the 1950s maybe. I think one of the things that's introduced it is maybe this region, because the mandolin, as you know, is such a good part of old-time and bluegrass music. And it's really hard to separate old-time bluegrass, especially old-time, from Irish music here in the Valley. One particular section that just started up and I'll be speaking about in a moment. I think everyone there except for two people plays old-time as well as Irish music. So we'll be trying to stick with the Irish tunes, but they can't help but pull out something that would definitely be an old-time jam as one being the tenor banjo, or the 4-string banjo, which you see more associated with Irish music as opposed to the 5-string. So a quick intro about these different instruments. The banjo, too, is something that came, there we go. So maybe I think more and more people are becoming aware of the roots of the banjo. I always love asking my students this. I say, who plays the banjo? Where's the banjo from? You get the typical stereotype response, you know, it's mountain men, overalls, it's a white instrument. But they're very interested in to find out that really it has its roots in an African musical tradition. It's part of the African-American musical connection that's happened here. Oh, I'm not going to touch anything. So I think I've got a couple of videos to show you too. And I've noticed even in the world of ethnomusicology, there's more scholars really that are trying to get information out there and how the banjo really has. So, I mean, it's rooted in African music and came over, obviously, with the slave trade, but it was really growing as part through the African-American musical tradition into so many different genres that we hear today and that are associated with the U.S. But there's another instrument, too. Actually, several instruments, as you'll see in these images, that have been part of the African-American musical traditions here, especially in this region, in the southeast and the mideast, and even the northeast parts of it. Other instruments associated too that seem to have lost their connection with the African-American community, being connected with them anyway. Here's one image you see of a young gentleman who's playing. Does anyone know the name of this instrument? Yes, I mean, you can have a whole list of these, right? Squeeze box, concertina, right? So obviously that's also an instrument that's been, so it is part of the Irish traditional music scene too. Maybe more so the Anglo concertina than another counterpart called the English concertina. But it was definitely part, I mean, it's interesting, something that hasn't really been explored in a scholarly way. You know, the tracings of flute music and concertina music and some of these other instruments within the African-American community. Another picture here I love to see. I think one thing I liked, and I think the sheets may have mentioned, I was really lucky and fortunate to be part of the Crooked Road. How many of you are familiar with the Crooked? Yeah. This is wonderful. No hands go up when I'm in there. This is great. But, you know, tracing the roots and connections, they're really trying to bring in tourism dollars to Southwest Virginia. I was able to be part of the National Council for Traditional Arts when the research for the guidebook was going on. At the time, I was the only one in the office who was actually from the region. So I was thrilled to be part of this, to go back down and to actually become even more familiar with music from my own region. And one of the lovely things I found out that even though there was such strife and racial issues between whites and blacks in this region, one of the wonderful things is that music sometimes was a bridge over that. Racial issues would be pushed to the side. And you see that happening in the roots of old-time music and then the influences coming in to, like I said, Celtic music today. And here's just one image here you can see. A lot of people seem to forget, too, the strong influence, again, like I said, with African-American music and other traditions. Here, you can maybe make out the title below with the Ballard Chef's Jug Band. So again, kind of touching into areas of music maybe not associated. There's a couple of videos I want to show you. Thank you, Russ, for helping with this. I believe the first one here is, if I'm not mistaken, the banjo clip. And you'll see the date and some information at the bottom of the slide. And this is available on YouTube if you'd like to look at it more and later. But how many banjo players are here? None? Oh, you're not admitting it. Oh, okay, one. Oh, they're not admitting it, they're admitting. But there's one style of playing the banjo claw hammer where it really does look like your hands in the claw shape, and you'll see the thumb moving with the fingers, usually kind of kept together. So more associated, I believe, with old time than with bluegrass. But you'll see a gentleman here in West Africa, sorry, I don't remember the actual community at the moment, playing it on a homemade banjo. And if you can, notice his hands, he's playing very much in the claw hammer style that you find in this region in the U.S. Hopefully this will work. right? So maybe those of you that are familiar with banjo, they just you can see this hand is very similar to the clawhammer style here. And then this is connecting with old-time music. I think in this region, because so many people cross over and play both old-time and Irish, some of these styles of playing that you'll find, for example, here with the banjo, kind of cross over a bit into these Irish sessions that you may pass by early musicians there as well. Because there's a lot of, Alan Jabor, maybe you've heard of him, a scholar and also a fantastic musician, he gave a talk about how the style that African Americans had in playing the banjo actually kind of crossed over into maybe the bowing style of the fiddle, the shuffle bow that you find, for example, in old-time music. And if you have old-time fiddlers playing an Irish session, it's really hard to do a completely different bow than what you're used to. So it's something that's kind of influential in the music that you have here. And also this sketch, I believe from 1800s, I'll have to check that, is a young, at this point he was a slave, a young slave who's playing an instrument. Can you make out what it is? Fiddle, yeah, it's a fiddle. So he's holding it a bit different. It's not like the classical style we're used to. So holding it a bit farther down. Can you see how the bow is shaped? The bow he's holding in the right hand. Yeah, it's very arced. So like the ones that you'll see us playing, they're considered to be a little bit of an arc too, but inward arc, but pretty much a straight bow. From this is a drawing that was done, like I said, of a young slave, a Negro slave, with the bow, and it was a very arced bow that he was performing on with the fiddle held low. I think the fiddle tradition in Africa is something that's been overlooked a lot. The banjo is starting to come out more, the connections you have. And people say, well, this is the area where the European fiddle met with the banjo with the roots from Africa. Kind of overlooking a bit that there were instruments like fiddles in different parts of Africa as well. And there's a wonderful scholar at UCLA, Jacqueline JJ, who's actually doing work in this area, making these historical connections with fiddling styles. So this is something coming out now too, and I think you'll be hearing more about. But I was able to find a video of this, and you'll notice at least the way it's held and the bow shape is very similar. Oops, yeah, click on that. Oops. Click on the far left side of the trackpad. Yeah, there you go. And maybe click it one more time to get it started. Is being done in, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out with that. All of this, of course, leading into this African American influence and obviously early string band music, which I think maybe many people here are familiar with too. And usually have like the fiddle, guitar, maybe a fiddle banjo that would play, a lot of times would be hired, black musicians hired to play for white dances. And so it was something historical, but that has faded out a bit within the African American community, but there are people reviving it, bringing it back into play. It never disappeared, but I think it's coming to the fore again. And there's a particular group, a particular group that maybe some of you are familiar with, the Carolina Chocolate Drops, coming out of NC State. And they're taking a name that was one of these earlier string band groups, the North Carolina Chocolate Drops. They just kind of dropped the North and kept the rest of the name. And they're really making a name for themselves, actually. They're playing at national festivals, and they've played a few times around this area, too. If you get a chance to see them perform, I highly recommend it, because they're really kind of bringing the style of music back and reconnecting it with the community. And one of the people I think that was a founder for them and an inspiration for them was an African-American fiddler named Joe Thompson. Yeah, he was like one of the last main living vestiges of this style of music, and he and his relatives would play for these dances. Unfortunately, I just found out he died February 21st of this year, so not that long ago, at the age of 93. So I felt very fortunate. One of his last masked all day long workshops was in Tacoma Park, not far from where I lived, so I was able to go. And he was an amazing person. Whole day workshop with him. He'd had a stroke a couple of years before, so his playing wasn't up to what it used to be. But the stories were very rich. So if you ever, I think it's something I hope scholars also continue doing, is connecting with people who are parts of these traditions and finding out the stories and information for them, because it really does such an enrichment of the traditions. But what I want to do is now touch on locally, kind of bring us into the present day with the music that you'll find in different areas. And so I've got a few different slides to touch on to that, and maybe these are things that will be even more familiar with some of us in the room. The first one, and I did mention the flute maker that lives just 40 minutes from here, who's definitely considered, I would say, the best Irish flute maker in the world, Patrick Olwell. Maybe some of you are familiar? Yeah, some of you, yeah. Amazing, it's a very excellent performer himself, but he's definitely, I honestly would say, the best Irish flute maker, and he's right here in our own backyard. He lives in Nelliesburg, just south of Charlottesville. And you can see him, there's a picture of him there in his workshop, and he makes fantastic flutes. I think there's a 5 or 7 year wait for some of these. If you know them, you can get booted up the list a little bit, but you're still going to wait for a while. But they're fantastic instruments, and they're some of the best players in the world will play these flutes, like Matt Malloy of the Chieftains, Seamus Egan of Solus, and there's a whole list that goes on. And I just recently found out there's a documentary about to be filmed on him. I think it's called The Keymaster. And if you're interested, I can get you some more information. But I don't believe filming has started yet, but they're hoping to have this out by the end of the year. And so you'll definitely be hearing more about him. But he still lives there and works there, and he has 2 sons that are also fantastic musicians themselves. And you'll see a couple images of them when I talk about some of the other groups and influences that are happening. But he's very open, so you can contact him and go to his workshop and see him make flutes, and he's happy to demonstrate and perform for you. The same way musicians and luthiers are down along the Crooked Road. They're very open about and welcoming to people who are just interested in their field. Oops, let me go back one here. The picture in the middle is his son Aaron Olwell, who's a 3-time All-Ireland champion. Plays flute, whistles, fiddle, concertina. I think he's picked up banjo, and who knows what else since the last time I saw him. Amazing performer, and he's the one I first started taking Irish fiddle lessons with. Still gives lessons if anyone's interested. He's wonderful working with adults. But he's also part of the Grimm School, which we'll be hearing about in a second, which may be something some of you are also familiar with. And you see on the right, some of Patrick used to make some bamboo flutes. I don't know if he still does that as much as using other woods, like the hardwoods for flutes, is definitely taking it more of his time. But he and Aaron are very much performing and keeping the community alive in Charlottesville and influencing what's happening on this side. And with Patrick, I couldn't help but mention a couple other people connected with him. I think though only Patrick's actually local to this particular valley here, the other 2 are also influential in the music that's happening through. And I met one gentleman, Miss George, who knows them there. I'm not the only one who knows the gentleman on the right by the name of Nick Whitmer. He used to work at Accident Regional Library for years. Unfortunately, he's moved away to Ithaca, but he and Patrick were the 2 great luthiers, I think, for Irish music in the region. Pat making the flutes, and on the right-hand side, you can see Nick playing one of his uilleann pipes. Both of them would hold house sessions and also play in local music sessions too. So they're very interested in not only making the instruments and so on, and making a living, but also being part of the musical community, sharing tunes, helping people that are just getting into the field and wanting people to really share in the music. Very warm, welcoming people. It's actually how Russ and I met at one of Nick's house sessions when he lived in Port Republic. The third person there at the bottom is David Shine, who is actually a New York, the list for one of the best-selling book authors, like conspiracy theory book. But he also is retired and lives outside of Blacksburg and is a fantastic harpist. And when there's house jams at Pat's place outside Nelliesford, so you will see David often come up and perform there as well. And what's interesting is that now he lives in Blacksburg. There's sessions in Blacksburg, sessions in Floyd County, and sessions around here where people will cross over and intermingle. So a lot of the tunes that I've learned recently have been through David at one of the sessions there, or at one of the Floyd sessions where I can bring it back and introduce it to sessions I've played it here, as well as other Irish musicians too. So I'm going to be giving examples just from mainly Charlottesville, Stanton, and Harrisonburg in a few minutes, but you can find this with any musician. How you have connections with other people in other locales and getting to know them and playing music with them will influence what happens locally. Obviously, what is also helpful is having an abundance of festivals and Celtic weeks that people will go to. On the left there are the festivals. There's just a few I put up there. I could have continued on with a few more slides as well. The International Festival mentioned at the bottom is just technically the name for the one that happens in Harrisonburg, usually in September every year. It's been going for maybe 12 years, 12 or 13 years now. The one in Roanoke, Front Royal, one in Lexington, you can add on. The Victorian Days one that used to happen in Stanton would always have Irish musicians performing for that as well. So all of these are giving opportunities for people that are wanting to perform and perform professionally, even if it may not be their full-time job. These festivals are ways that they can get out there and continue this music tradition, introduce new people to what's happening locally. In the Celtic weeks, I call those Celtic weeks. I know some of you are familiar with these. In the summertime, especially, at different places around the U.S., there'll be a week where they bring in amazing professional performers of different instruments, of different types of song or traditions, and that week will have a focus. So there, for example, Augusta Heritage Center in Elkins, West Virginia, has several weeks throughout the summer that are geared towards a particular genre of music. They have an Irish Celtic week where people can learn from the best in the field in the U.S., but also people coming from Ireland to teach private classes, and maybe just 10, 15 people. And you see an image down there at the bottom. That was from the Augusta Irish Week a year or two ago. Shenandoah Gathering at Warren Wilson College in Nashville is very popular, and a lot of the people that play in different sessions and communities in Virginia will meet up there once a year and exchange tunes and learn new tunes and bring them back to their community. So this musical migration is still happening today, even if it's in a shorter distance than before. And the Catskills too, a lot of the people from Charlottesville, for example, and some others in the valley will go up to the Catskills in eastern New York and be part of the Irish week there. And a lot of times, some of these people are well known here, for example, Aaron, and will be teachers at these weeks too. And I mentioned it briefly before, BRIMS, the Blue Ridge Irish Music School, based in Charlottesville, has been very influential. I know they've performed here at the museum before, at various other venues in Virginia and DC as well. And I was fortunate to go with them in 2004 when they did one of their first or second tour in Ireland. We were actually meeting with local amazing performers, getting lessons from them, and then being able to perform in sessions there. What that does, though, is bringing people here into these locations where they're meeting with these professional, amazing musicians that may not tour in the U.S. They come and learn these tunes and styles of playing, come back, and they re-enthuse the people here with new tunes, new ways of playing, stories about tunes, and it really livens up the music scene that you have in your own local community. So the options and possibilities like with the Brown School, it's wonderful to have, and places and venues like that should certainly be supported because they make the possibility for the great variety of music that we have here in the Valley. One other thing to mention too that Brooms does, they do offer private lessons in dance and Shona singing and instruments, but they also sponsor concerts and workshops. And if you're familiar with the Irish fiddler Kevin Burke, they have him coming in April to do a house concert, and then also a workshop, an afternoon workshop. So if anyone's interested, I can give you details on that as well. Local venues, please support these. Because you're wondering, I think most people here, if you're coming to this lecture, you've probably been to several of these as well to hear some amazing local music and music being brought into these venues. One of the things we used to joke about and how wonderful Patrick Owa was to have is that we would have top-of-the-line bands coming through and playing what might be a small venue as opposed to D.C. or New York or Boston. They're coming through here and performing in Harrisonburg at Court Square, or now they could be performing at the Mockingbird. Mainly because a lot of times the flutist in that group needs to see Patrick for a tune-up on an instrument. So Patrick being located here in the Valley was certainly influential, I think, in getting some bands to come through. Melissa comes through quite a bit. Solos comes through quite frequently. You often see, for example, these flutists at Patrick's workshop buying another instrument or having something repaired. So again, having a luthiers nearby is a wonderful thing to also bring in artists that may not be tempted to come through otherwise. Corrigan's Public House is the one that's just started up an Irish session about a month and a half ago, every Sunday night from 8 to 11. Wonderful foods. If you're interested, you can come and hear live Irish music. They take requests, I hear. Shenandoah Pizza, maybe even a John Huygens, who's just been a wonderful influence in getting live music, blues, jazz, whatever into the region. I've seen a museum here with musicians even that are part of the cultural interpreters, but also sponsoring festivals and events as well, and bringing in these options for live music. Mockingbird, which maybe many of you have gone to, Rapunzel's Cafe and Coffee House in Livingston, Austin has live music, and also Irish performers. Owl plays there quite a bit. And then the universities here too, obviously are great sponsors for bringing in live music. So we're locationed in a great position for getting some unique talent coming through, whether it's Ani Ivers or Dervish, Kevin Burke, Martin Hayes, all these amazing people coming through here because I think of the venue locations and people like Patrick Goldwell who sponsor Irish music in the area. And I think all of this kind of enthuses people into wanting to become more involved in it as well. There are earlier Irish groups, and maybe some of you know some of these people, or are some of these people. But there are earlier groups like the Ryegrass Rollers, Roaring Mary out of Charlottesville, who are part of Brooms or not, and influence other performers as well. I think some of you are smiling and laughing and nodding because there are some people here you may see. But obviously, it's not just Irish music, but there's a great piping tradition, the current one anyway, that's being reinvigorated with pipe bands in the Valley as well. I mean, much of these you've probably seen at different parades or events that are happening. Wilderness Road, that Russ is a part of, that's based here actually at the museum. They have a CD out, I believe, that's for sale in the gift shop. My group, Mother Shillelagh's, Murphy. I mean, that's just quick ones I thought off the top of my head. All of these are performing locally and live, doing wonderful live music in a Celtic style. So, I mean, you have a lot of opportunities to hear a lot of interesting types of music, songs, instrumentals, you name it. Very a great opportunity here. And before we start doing just a few tunes for you, I just want to end it with this last one, music sessions. All this kind of comes in together and shows you how this musical migration can happen. So you have instruments coming in from different areas, whether it was for the Pennsylvania Germans bringing through what was the ancestor of the mountain dulcimer. And you'll see Phyllis Gaskins there with the white scarf playing mountain dulcimer at the session at Corrigan's on Sunday nights. A gentleman playing the bowline in the middle, a guitarist in the back. The fiddler there, Carol C, is playing fiddle, but also playing accordion. And a lot of people coming together and sharing music. They may have been old-time musicians or still are old-time musicians, but also play quite well in the Irish tradition. So you have this crossover of genres happening and really creating a unique, interesting music scene. So now what I'd like to do is just have Russ and I play a few of these tunes for you and give you a little bit of a story about it, about how it kind of became part of what you would find in Irish music here in the Valley, whether it's at a session or being performed maybe by one of the local bands. Tunes that you would hear being played locally. Sorry. The old-time tradition of music as well as in the Irish tradition of music. And there's dozens, if not hundreds of tunes that you can find in both. Maybe with a little bit of a variance or a different version or a different name, but the tune is still recognizable, whether it's The Girl I Left Behind Me, which I think is in every genre of music. That's probably punk bands that do now. I don't know if you can see that one anywhere. But one we'll play for you called Beggar Man, also known as the Red-Haired Boy. Maybe some of you know, I saw some heads moving like you did, some lips moving like you're doing the words. Some of the bands around me too, they'll play that song and include the tune as well. And the Corrigans, oftentimes, the guitarist will sing it, and then the instrumentalists will come in and out with the tune itself. So it's, again, one of the tunes that you'll find locally played. There's another one that we'll play for you called Spoodiscary. I actually have the story behind it from the man that wrote it. A man named Samuel Ian Burns. This is actually a tune from Shetland. He wrote it back in 1980, and he said, Spoodiscary is the croft belonging to my late grand aunts, Bella and Joe Nicholson, situated between a couple of the villages there. And he's talking about the different ways that he's seen it spelled. But pretty much it talks about a bit of land, rocky land that shoots out into the water. And that he wrote this about his family's land. And it's been recorded and played for a lot of contra dances as well as in Scottish and Irish sessions. It worked its way here. I know David Shine, the harpist I showed you, already knew the tune. I picked it out of a contra dance book, so I'm not sure. A lot of other people come to it from different directions. But this is a Shetland Scottish tune we play here called Spoodiscary. The next tune we'll play is another tune from Scotland called Atholl Highlanders, and it's one of the popular section tunes that you'll find throughout the U.S. and Ireland and Scotland as well. Also a very popular bagpipe tune. A lot of bagpipers, when you hear it, you'll feel a very strong kind of bagpipe feel to it, very strong march-like tune. Some people play it as a march, and other people play it as a jig. I think we're jig-like, maybe with the march. But Russ is also being very kind to me, and I must apologize to you guys in advance. The flute's and whistle I've been playing forever. The fiddle's kind of new to me, but he's been very kind in letting me play with him. I play the fiddle. So we'll see how this goes. other tune we'll play for you, a lot of people call it the Dum Dum Polka. And if you're an artist musician, it's one out in your head. It's not because it's dumb, it's just there's a part of it where everyone goes dum dum. And so they can't, I've seen it so many times at sessions that they don't remember the name, they'll just say, oh, it's the one that goes dum dum, the Dum Dum Polka. The name is John Ryan's polka, but it's something that's familiar with a lot of sessions. Again, it's like some of the other tunes we played, it's very popular around here and in other sessions too. And maybe we'll play it the Chieftain's way. Okay. Okay. The next one is a set of tunes. We've been doing things individually a lot of times in sessions, so you'll have 2, 3 tunes that are back to back. So the next one is like that. And I actually got this arrangement from Russ. Is this on the CD here?
I don't know if it's on our, one of the tunes is. We call it the nautical trio just because it's the rolling waves, out on the ocean, and New Age ship, so they all kind of have a nautical theme. But I know the New Age ship's on one of the recordings. I don't think Steve?
Only New Age.
wonderful, but spit bumps. Thank you for your towel. If you're ever at a session, never sit on the right-hand side of a flute player. Unpleasant things happen.
The left.
Yeah, or the left of a fiddle player. Wes and I were sitting completely wrong way at the session on Sunday. He was sitting here and I was sitting there, and I was dripping on him in his fiddle case while he was poking me with his fiddle. Things you learn from trial and error. That tune too, I think you learned that for me. I learned the last tune, the Shift. I learned that from Jessie Trainham, who was a fiddler previously in my Irish band, and she had gotten it off of an Altan CD. So it's again the music that's coming through, whether it's live music, sometimes CDs. And she'd gotten hers at one of the Celtic weeks and picked up this tune. These different ways that music can migrate through communities is a way that can kind of reinvigorate, introduce new tunes into particular places. And one other tune we'll do for you. Maybe this will be the second to last one. I don't want to keep you too long. But it's the two tunes we put together. The first one is called The Wedding Reel, and the second one is The Merry Blacksmith. The first one is a Scottish tune that's been misnamed, thanks, I think in part, and mostly or completely, due to the Irish group Winnisa. And they take blame for this too. They love this tune, they perform it quite frequently. People love it. It's a very catchy tune when you hear it. And they call it The Wedding Reel. It was played for a lot of weddings, especially in Donegal. But it turns out that that's not the actual name of the tune. It should be called The Clouds Farewell, written by a gentleman from Scotland whose name I can't remember. The second one is another very popular Irish tune that you'll hear in sessions anywhere. And I picked this one originally to put with it because of the title, and I knew I play with Wes a lot. It's called The Merry Blacksmith, and his other job is the blacksmith here at the museum. You're married, yes. not Scottish. I don't think it really counts Celtic by any means. But I'm including it because it's something that kind of shows that traditions change, and music, as well as people, migrate in and out of communities and add to communities and change communities, even after they've left it and gone on somewhere else. This particular tune, I think most people in here will recognize. I wonder if I should even say the name of it to start. And I'm kind of breaking another rule, because usually in Irish sessions or with bands, a lot of times the melody line is the main focus, and you wouldn't really have a harmony backing up, especially maybe more so in Irish sessions. But we're going to play this one for you, and Russ is very kind of playing lead on it. And I'll be really messing him up on fiddle. He's very kind and very patient to understand. But it's something that gets played a lot. It's almost like the instrumental version of Danny Boy, I think, for Irish singers. It's also something that gets played a lot at old-time jams, to the point where I think some musicians don't even play it anymore. But it's a lovely tune, and it was written in 1983 by Jay Unger. He inspired Ken Burns, Civil War. Oh, I see he's nodding already. I don't even see the title. Part of the Civil Wars documentary that Ken Burns did, A Show Can Farewell. And I've had this, I think, at any session I've ever played it, someone's always seen on the stage. So it's a lovely waltz, it's a modern waltz, like I said. It's not really part of what you would call a Celtic tradition. I think it's becoming accepted, and I think will eventually become something you hear quite frequently from bands and sessions. So I'd like to close out by playing Shifting for Love.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. If you have questions, please feel free to go up and talk to Cheryl or Ross. If not, we'll see you next week. Thank you.